Good morning, everyone. My name is Olga Kiriliuk. I'm chair of SEEDIG Executive Committee. Welcome to SEEDIG 7 series featuring keynote speeches by prominent digital and technology experts and followed by interactive community discussions. It's still morning hours, but I'm sure that probably before joining us, you've already replied to a couple of emails, sent some chat messages, and performed some Google search. But did you ever think what is the environmental cost of these simple everyday habits? We have some statistics which says that if every citizen of United Kingdom was sending one less thank you email, we could save over 6,000 tons of carbon, which is equivalent to taking over 3,000 diesel cars off the road. So this is impressive, right? And this is why we decided to gather today all together to discuss how we can jointly build a more sustainable future for the Southeastern Europe and beyond by twinning green and digital. And before we move to our keynote fireside chat, I would actually want to invite to some welcoming remarks people without whom no event is possible. And I'm not talking about our speakers yet, but about our sponsors. And here at SEEDIG, we are extremely grateful to RIPE-NCC and ICANN for their continuous support of our efforts to organize events like this within the SEEDIG 7 series format. And with great pleasure, I'm inviting Gergana Petrova, RIPE-NCC External Relations Officer and also a member of SEEDIG 7 series program committee, for short welcoming remarks, but also to share with us how many emails, Gergana, did you send in the morning today?
Thank you, Olga, and hi everyone. Actually, today I'm good. I think I sent like one or two. It has been a relatively quiet Monday morning for me, but welcome everyone to the session. It's really nice to see so many of you joining us today. My name is Gergana Petrova. I work at RIPE-NCC. RIPE-NCC is the regional internet registry for Europe, Middle East, and parts of Central Asia. So I will be your chat monitor today. If I will let the speakers know if you post any questions for them in the chat. But I also wanted to say that it has been a real pleasure for me to be part of the program committee, and I'm looking forward to see how this session will shape up. If you haven't already, subscribe to the SEEDIG mailing list so you will get notifications when we announce other sessions from the SEEDIG series. And as to, in my capacity as representing RIPE-NCC as a sponsor, I wanted to say that we're really excited to see how well SEEDIG is developing. It's been a very important platform where people from Southeast Europe can convene, exchange thoughts and ideas, but also come to learn and hear different points of view. What is really great about these events is that there is a lack of pressure to achieve a certain concrete contract at the end of it. You don't have to come back and show your boss that you've negotiated such and such position or deal. And that means that you're free to think, you can soak up the discussion, express your opinion, and yeah, there is just no pressure. Sustainability is a topic that is really close to my heart. And so I'm really looking forward to see how the discussion shapes up, and I hope that many of you will participate in it. And so with this, I will hand over to Andrea, I guess, from ICANN.
We don't have Andrea yet.
Oh,
so
he's not joined yet.
Probably later on. Thank you very much, Gergana, for all support and for your kind words. And remember Gergana well, because as she said, she is our remote moderator for today. So she is the one to actually take your questions and deliver them to the speakers. And with that, let's get started with the keynote fireside chat. And I'm really pleased to welcome RIPE-NCC community builder and outspoken environmental activist, and also a person who knows how to ask hard questions. Please join me in welcoming Vesna Manojlović.
Hi, thank you. Good morning, I'm Vesna. I work for RIPE-NCC as a community builder, and I did well for the environment this morning. I have cycled to the office instead of sending emails. And I'm honored to be asked to be a moderator on today's session, because I'm very curious what our speakers are going to say. And as Olga said, I love asking tough questions. So yeah, if you don't dare to ask a question yourself, you can privately chat me, and then I will ask that question on your behalf. So let's start. Let me not be the one to introduce the speakers. I would like them to speak for themselves. Um, Ilias and Frederick. Okay, so to start with, you will have a short few minutes to present where do you come from and to introduce some of the topics for today, and then we will have a more interactive time of like answering the questions and discussing each other's points that arise, and then we will also try to include the questions of the audience throughout this session. So let's start. I would like to invite Ilias to be the first one.
So let me introduce myself. My name is Ilias Yakovidis. I work for the European Commission, DG Connect, so that's the IT department of the European Commission. And I'm coordinating the green and digital transition. So that means working on many, many different topics, basically in two categories. How do we make the ICT world greener? So the footprint and the impact on the climate environment is minimized, and hopefully actually we drive it to zero before 2050. And more importantly for me, which I will focus more today, is how do we use ICT to help the other sectors, the buildings, the construction sector, the transport, the agriculture, energy networks, manufacturing, smart cities, whatever you can imagine in the society and economy that can use IT smartly to reduce its footprint there. So those are the two kind of introductory points only.
Thank you. This is really important, especially for the community of the RIPE NCC. And so I'm also going to be taking a lot of notes to bring back to our community. So let's hear from Frederick.
Hey, thank you, Vesna, and hello, everybody. I'm happy to see you again all. For those who don't know me, I've been spending quite some time in this wonderful community, including in SEEDIG. I'm working with Digital Goes Green. That is an international non-for-profit organization based in Brussels, whose primary mission is to bridge digital and sustainability in green, and make sure that this is not an oxymoron, because the bad news is the internet that we all love has a huge environmental impact. And the reason we're saying we want to bridge this is that we recognize that both objectives of digitizing our societies and the sustainability are equally important. So we do that with a very innovative mindset. We want to make sure that people continue to benefit from the values of the internet while being sustainable. So we really want to focus on innovative solutions, and with something that we all share here with the same DNA, which is in a collaborative way, because we believe that whenever you speak about the internet, and on top of this environment and sustainability, you can just not achieve anything without the collaboration of every stakeholders who has an interest in this conversation. So that is, in short, what it is that we're trying to do. And so I will come back later on that, Vesna, about these innovations that I just spoke about, because the key issue for us is to have digital service green by design, and I will explain that later. Thank you very much.
Thank you for this short introduction. And now I would like to go back and go into a little bit more detail, specifically first going back to Ilias. And I was wondering, when you say that your goal is to help other sectors to use the ICT technologies to become greener. Do you have some examples that there have been some successes in the European Union economy of these attempts, let's say, the ones that the Southeastern Europe countries could copy? And later on, we will come back to how does it work the other way around? What are the successes that already exist in the SEE? But let's first focus on the what are the best current practices that have been already developed that can be just accepted and replicated in the SEE region?
Right. Before giving you some examples, let's just take a little bit the landscape. I am quite aware of the situation in the Southeast Europe. So we have some indicators now on the international scene that show that there are some systemic problems. The digitalization is not on the same level as in the kind of, let's say, the West part of Europe. So there is kind of a race to put the government services, to put the SMEs to digitize more, to make the innovation kind of something more inherent. Of course, there's a rule of law and all these systemic things I'm not going to mention. And although there are very good educational systems, there are still some lack of basic digital skills. So there is a run that these countries do just to, they feel like never-ending catch-up run. And now the green comes now. And now suddenly sustainability is the top priority. Now, is it just another backpack of 25 kilos for the runner that is trying to catch up, or is it an opportunity? And that's the biggest question. Is the green just another layer where we just, slow us down in our never-ending running, or is it an opportunity? And here comes the trick. The countries in the Southeast Europe are a little bit below when it comes to energy transition. They are below in terms of transport and building updates with respect to energy efficiency and material efficiency. Now, is it a problem or is it an opportunity? Let's see it as an opportunity, but we can only see it as an opportunity if the companies and the private sector, together with the public sector, give trust to local innovations and together with international partners, if needed, to really start working on that, because a lot of funding will go in that direction. So the whole premise, the basic line I would like to explain today is that in your run to digitize, those digitalizations that also gain green, that also achieve green gains will be given priority. So that's an opportunity. So let's see the green digital as an opportunity, not only to catch up, but to do something new. But for that, we need constant public recognition and kind of a legislative framework like we did in Europe for the Fit for 55 and climate law. And I think those are being copied in those countries by governments. But at the same time, let's look at what are the solutions that are achieving things in precision farming that are better for the farmers, and at the same time, they reduce the footprint. And I'll give explanation, I will give examples right after, but let's give also to Frederick a chance to see how you can do that while making sure that you as a company choose the greener way of digitizing yourself, because there are different options. You can buy all the equipment, you can virtualize your workstations, you can check what kind of data center you collaborate with. So before we talk about how to use green to digitize, let's make also sure that you choose, whatever you are, government or company, the greenest possible IT infrastructure for yourself.
Well, Vesna, if I may jump in, as Ilias invited me to do so, and I believe Ilias started exactly the right way. I would like to jump on this one. Yes, there's a lot of report out there showing how bad the SEEDIG region, Southeastern Europe region, has been hit by the pandemic, and OECD says very loudly that there is indeed some lack right now and some gaps in the region, including a difficult transition to what we call a knowledge-based society, and at the same time, a lack of sensitivity or considerations in the economic to the environmental consideration. I believe, as Ilias said, there might be an opportunity here because if you try to join both objectives all together, you can, and certainly in the regions, develop a competitive advantage compared to the rest of the world. If you start building a knowledge-based societies, ICT-based societies with an environmental mindset into it, you might just go and step another step that other regions haven't done so far. But you need to have this environmental mindset when you start building these new digitized societies. And this is actually coming back to what we started discussing a few minutes ago. We really need to realize that in the overall effort, and I guess Ilias will come back on the 5 pillars of the digital agenda and environmental agenda of the European Union, of course, when you start doing this, you need to really remind that there is a very high level impact of digitizations. You have many measurements out there. We will certainly discuss the fact that those measurements need to be assessed as well, because there are many ways to measure the environmental impact of ICT. But we need to recognize, and everybody does, that it has a huge impact. Whether the internet is the third or the fourth polluter doesn't change much the fact that there is a high impact. And this is where you need then to focus on what it is that you can do to make a change. So far, what we've seen is that most government and stakeholders are focusing on equipment. And that is a natural way to focus on a way to diminish the impact of a system, that is servers and even your computer that you use. How can we diminish the environmental impact of it? Another big avenue that we see coming fast is what some governments calling sobriety. And that is telling the users that they should use the internet less or in a different way. I'm not sure this is really appropriate in the same time when you're just promoting a more digitalized society, but that's for another conversation. What we see is that the way that you are shaping, designing services, and I will come back with concrete examples, will have an impact on the whole ecosystem of the internet. Because let's not forget that the internet ecosystem, but I know where I speak, we all share this DNA. The internet ecosystem is a circular economy. There are many different responsibilities and many different shareholders of the whole internet. So I'll stop here, but I believe that talking about both greening and digitizations, the fact that both objectives needs to be achieved all together might give the Southeastern Europe some competitive advantage. Yes.
Thank you. So now I have both questions for Frederick and for Ilias, but let's keep the suspense. So let's go back to Ilias, and I wrote down what I want to ask Frederick, what he just said. So Ilias, you do have something in mind to talk about already, but I see it on the chat, but what was also on the chat and what I'm curious, when you say that companies should choose the greenest, my very general question is why? What kind of benefits and incentives do they have, except for being mindful of the planet? What's in it for them? And you did mention the green gains. So that's also what Desiree was asking. So can you incorporate that in your next segment, please?
Yes. So when you choose this, let's get in the shoes of SME in that region, and maybe that's the best, because the large companies are normally kind of branches of other large companies. So maybe SME is more representative. But
can you say? Can you spell out that acronym, SMEs?
Oh, small and medium enterprises. And so a small company. Let's talk about a little bit a smaller size company. It's a company that is less than 500 employees. Okay, so I think let's talk about that, maybe more representative for the region than talking about large. But I'll tell you what we do large in the next point, and I'll give you a link. If you're a large company and if somebody's listening, being part of a large company, I have a very specific suggestion that I will do, and I'll put it on the chat later. So choose green has two things. When you as a company have to buy your own equipment as to digitize yourself, because most of the, as you've seen, because of the COVID, everybody went and is doing things online more and more. So as a company, you will need to manage your own ICT infrastructure. There are greener ways just because it matters for your pocket. So something when you spend less energy you need to renew your material in few years, so you keep your equipment longer. You can buy it as a leasing and make a service that it's refurbished, it's repaired. So buy green means cheaper. What I meant green gains and what I meant also choose green is choose applications and choose to be active to provide services where the people need it, because you need to make money. So it's kind of an economic advantage, whatever you're selling. It has to be socially acceptable. And if you, at the same time, you say, by doing this, you can achieve a reduction in CO2, environmental pollution reduction, wastewater, I mean, less water if it's precision farming or pesticides. So that's what I mean green gains. If you can reduce, if you can actually improve environmental protection and reduce greenhouse gas emissions with your solution, but that you need to calculate. And there is the whole part that I would like to invite companies to see what we're doing. How do they actually can present their solution as something that makes sense for you as a client economically, socially, but also environmentally, because that was not on our map before. Before we were just pushing on, look, do this because that's better economically. And because the funding and the laws and your government will give priority to those that do, of course, what they do as economically viable business. So any business that can show that they actually reduce pollution emissions and have environmental impact, positive environmental impact, will be the preferred companies for many reasons, from governments and international funding. And I'm talking to World Bank and EBRD and EIB. So all the financial institutions want to give money to those that have also environmental benefits. So clearer?
Just a moment. I'm really inspired with this, but what I'm hearing is that it's very easy to say economically viable, economic advantage. It's one word. Everybody understands what it means. But when you try to explain all these other green benefits, we just do not have terminology for that. We have to say like five things. I would love us as a community to come up with a word for this that will be accepted everywhere, just like economically is. We don't have to do it in this form.
One way to do it is to use word sustainability, but again, it will not help you. Sustainability is three things.
Yeah.
Sustainability has three dimensions: economic, social, environmental.
Yeah.
So when you are in a business and say, I'm a sustainable business, then you have to actually measure. And that's why I like the Stan Erik's comment, and I'll come back to that. You have to actually measure how you helping the economic dimension, because the economic, the environmental dimension, the economic, it's the business as usual. Yeah. How you actually improving your viable business, you have a profit, you giving service to clients that are happy with, and they also improving their own well-being or their own business, whatever, if you're supplying to big company some service. So that is kind of clear. Now, what we are not clear about, how do I measure? How do I, as a company, how can I claim, how can I avoid greenwashing, saying, by doing this, using my service, I'll give you an example of precision farming that I promised, okay? By doing that, I'm actually also doing good for the environment. So imagine precision farming.
Can we
there are two ways to do.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
You did ask me to interrupt. Let's go back to Frederick and we'll get back to the precision farming just to keep it more dynamic. Is that okay, Elias?
Very good. Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, now. Okay, thank you. Which dynamic do you want me to leverage now? Because there are already so many angles that we discuss. Coming back to the incentive that you ask about SMEs or enterprises. Well, let's go from the top to bottom. I will do something I hate to do, and that is referring to international report that's saying how bad the situation is when it's about climate change and how badly it might hit regions, and the Southeast region won't escape this. I mean, honestly, when you look at the World Bank or the OECD, they keep saying that one of the regions that will suffer climate change will be Southeastern Europe. But that's not what I want to dig into right now. What I want to dig into right now is, as Elias introduced, I believe there is a whole consensus now at social economic level that we need to embark on sustainability because we have no other choice. And there are economic and financial incentives. When I said that we want and we need, as we all share here, to proceed in a large collaborative manner, it also includes, from our perspective, the financial world, because they keep telling us that from now on, they will only invest in sustainability, in sustainable enterprises. And they will have to demonstrate this. Measurements is another story, as we said from the very beginning here. Metrics and environment assessments will have to be, of course, made in a way that everybody understands what we're doing and that everybody agrees on what we're doing. But there is just more than social reputation right now. There is a policy consensus, there is a financial and economic one, where companies in the world understand that they need to embark on this. The solutions that we want to promote is really that we can achieve objective, as Ilya says, social, economic, and environmental objective in the same time. There is no reasons to avoid or to minimize one of them in the overall objectives. So we know that digitalization is really important subjective and sustainability is in the same time. And when we say green by design, let me give you an example. We know that during the pandemic, there has been a 40% increase in internet and in digital services. That is huge when you know already what the internet consumes in terms of environment. If you take the example of YouTube, we all were watching videos and doing teleconferences, the impact here is extremely important. And we have measured this. So there are consensus on the fact that YouTube consume about 10 million metric dioxide equivalent. That is huge. Now, the way you would design YouTube, the way the YouTube will be distributed, might have an impact at the end of the day on the environmental invoice, if I would say. So if you design YouTube, and there is a method that is called sustainable interaction design. If you design YouTube services in a way that whenever it's being used, it minimizes its impact, because some people, for example, use YouTube without watching the video, but just listening to music. And if you can identify that, you will have a gain in green that might be, and I got the figures here, that is just enormous, in kilotons per year. That would be the equivalent of all the efforts of Google for 5 years renewable energy. This is huge. So just in redesigning the way YouTube is being distributed, shaped, and used. So that is what we try to promote, and that is to see that you continue to use a service in digital service and in the same time minimizing your impact. So that is something that SMEs enterprise can also contribute to in the way they will be using it.
Okay, but this brings me back to for what you were saying before, which I haven't heard about, and that is sobriety. You mention now that there are changes that YouTube can do, but what are the changes that the SMEs can do to make their services more sober? Because YouTube just has to be modified by Google. What I got inspired with this sobriety concept was that we could work on localization, decentralization, and making things more regional, and that would also reduce the impact. And it would also work against the consolidation that exists right now in the internet. So that's a different aspect. It's not like environmental aspect, but it is connected somehow to this. So if you could remember this as a topic, as a question, Frederick, for later, when we get back to you, I would love to talk about that. So how can we all make these gains so that the users, I don't know, have to switch off the video themselves and only listen to the sound? Would that work, or something like that with the YouTube example? Maybe you have other examples, but now I want to go back to Ilyas. Because he's been waiting to talk about his example already for a while. Is that okay, Frederick?
Sure.
Elias.
Yes. I mean, sobriety, that's very much the consumer world and how we, each individual one of us, behaves. So I will also add, after Frederick introduces the topic, because there's a lot to be said on that. So let's come back a little bit to what it is to make one, to help through digital, a sector to be greener. Okay, so you have a precision farming. So that's one example. Farming is done the way it is done today, is that the incentives of the agricultural, the companies that are in the agricultural sectors are quantity-driven incentives. More pesticides I sell, more profit I make. More fertilizers I sell, more profit I make. More tractors I sell, more machinery I sell. And you know the names of these big companies that are doing that. So the profit is preventative spraying. Just, you know, you sprayed 10 tons last year, spray a little bit more, who knows, preventatively. Now, if we could turn it around and say, I will become, instead of agricultural product company, I'll become kind of a smart digitalized company. I partner with local ICT companies. So I'm in a country X. I go there and I partner with company that will have drones, IoT sensors in the soil and on the plants, trees, plants, whatever we're talking about. GPS on the tractor. I will put a subscription into a Copernicus weather images and landscape actually management images. And I will digitize a little bit that service. Then that same company, instead of providing just pesticides and fertilizers, can become a service company. And that venture can be a service company to cooperatives or big. I mean, you're not talking about small fields here, but the bigger fields where they provide a service of saying, I will guarantee the health, I will take care of the pesticides, fertilizer, and water management. I will use my IT. And with that IT, I have a guaranteed as a service income. So let's say 10 euro per hectare, I do this. So I have, as a farmer, I have guaranteed expense. I will not go every year more. Company has a guaranteed income. And now that what the company will do, they will minimize the use of pesticides and fertilizers because it's become a cost. So they put all that ICT to see, where do I need to spray? Where do I need to water? Where do I need to put fertilizer? And they will manage and minimize that. So which is environmental impact. So you are a company, you're making money, you're making something for the farmers, so they also can have money now because they also lower their costs. And you making environmental benefit, which is better water management, less pesticides, so healthier food. So social issues are you giving healthier food to the whole society. And less fertilizer, you actually don't degrade the soil. So fertilizers also work on the soil, and soil is also another natural resource and societal and environmental benefit. So now, of course, there are two ways to do it. You can say every farmer to buy these gadgets, or you as a company to do it. So what is the greener way? Every partner, if every farmer has to do it, we will have too many devices. So maybe the footprint of that digital will not match the gains that you're trying to achieve. So instead of trying, and the farmers have no skills, farmers have no money, they are not interested, they don't know. So there will be a huge pushback that this is just another model to sell quantity of electronics on farming world that doesn't have the know-how or the resources. So it has to be smartly done through the companies, and that's opportunity for domestic innovation with the agricultural, with the specialized expertise in the agricultural sector to do something smarter. Of course, we can talk that there is a small print. There always will be difficult things, and the difficult things will be who owns this data that will be produced by these precision farming services, and their data portability, because you don't want to be locked in one company and they own all the data, and then you are a hostage of that. So we have to make sure that there is also competition of these type of services, and that there is a ownership of this data, because that data tomorrow may be more valuable than the grain that you're trying to sell or the fruits. So you have to be careful. There are a lot of small prints, but I'm just giving you an example how ICT can change agriculture. And this model of going from products and selling quantity to sell services applies to all sectors. Instead of selling cars, sell mobility. Instead of selling bulbs, sell light. Instead of selling products, sell service as a product. So I can give you an example in every aspect of the economy. But what does it need? It needs digitization of the offer and local smart companies that can venture with big or companies or alone to provide such services that are profitable, are better for humanity socially, and better for the environment.
Okay, so I do have now so many questions, but I do want to also move to give a word to audience, and I see that Sten Erik is quite active, not so much asking questions, but saying things. So maybe would you like to say something, Sten Erik, or do you want Gergana to read out what you commented, or none of the above?
Let's see, can you hear me?
Yes, you have.
Yes.
You have 1 minute. I'm a strict moderator.
Okay, 1 minute. Try to do my best here. Well, one key point that I see here is to support, for instance, small farmers, which is also the same thing for SMEs, is to be able to deliver several services into one package that will make it attractive for them to start using the systems. Because one vital part here is the upstream delivery of data. All these mechanisms, when it comes to markets, mechanisms for people choosing the right tool, right products, or having financial institutions having the right decision-making tools and information, is based upon accurate data coming in from the bottom and up. If you don't have that, then it doesn't really matter what kind of KPIs and such you are using for evaluating the sustainability efforts and such. So, and we work in a global environment. Much of our products comes from global contexts. So if we are only aiming at a European-centric approach, then we will really shoot ourselves in the foot and also in the head. There are efforts now underway for future proposals now for Horizon Europe, and then one of them is sales, which is based upon a peer-to-peer infrastructure that is pre-built for being implementable on a global scale in a neutral platform, which is tremendously important, based very much on the experiences from the MyEco cost project, which demonstrated that we could create an upstream accounting system for resource and environmental impacts. So just these things that I said. Okay, now my minute is over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And
Microphone. Vesna, your mic.
Yes. Thank you for your intervention. That kind of reinforces this question that I had when you're talking, Ilias, about this example of greening the agriculture sector and working with the farmers. Also, from my background as a community builder and as an activist, how can we involve, or not how, I think it's crucial to involve the local communities and talk with the farmers about the farming solutions, rather than coming up with like, okay, this is what we engineers have came up with and we think it's the better idea. On one hand. On the other hand, you were talking about the domestic innovation when it comes to these ICT services, but all the equipment basically comes from China. So what are we going to do about it? Like the European industry of making ICT devices, is it there? So the first question that I had was, is this what you're talking about? Does that exist somewhere, or is it just science fiction? Like, is there an example of a concrete precision farming project that actually works somewhere in a European country? Thank you.
Yes. So innovation is not only technology innovation. So I'm not talking that somebody will innovate and find another type of chip or software, or okay, software, there is a lot of examples of everybody developing one, but the hardware is not an issue here to really innovate in the hardware. Innovation is also organizational, it's people. it's the local knowledge, because agriculture, same way as healthcare, is very local. It's very local knowledge, and big companies that are trying to come with their software say, I will now, automate your hospital or automate your farming, especially in this part of Europe where the small land ownership is dominant, has no chance. So a local small, medium enterprises that can talk to the locals and actually do it bottom up to understand the problems and equip and actually do it as a service to get this baseline. What is the baseline of our agriculture in this region? What is the baseline? Because people don't know the baseline. How much water are you using? How much pesticides are you using? How much fertilizer are you using? They do that, and the specialized, I'm sure ministry knows a little bit, but even ministry doesn't know everything. So there is a way to establish the baseline and start moving up and say, look, guys, it will be better for you if you use less water, fertilizer, pesticides, because it's your pocket. And let's share the profits. I will also take a little bit of that gain that you have, and then we scale it. Okay, so that's what I mean innovation, not necessarily that they will come up with a new connected device that is done X, Y, Z. So it's software and local knowledge. So more than that. And there, then the financing of such ventures, there is a lot of interest from the governments themselves, because that's what they will get money to support only those small, medium enterprises that can show environmental benefits. So there is the advantage to gain, instead of just digitizing and running the world of digital race, I will now add the dimension of green, and suddenly I have a new opportunity. And I can catch up where the others cannot, because I know the local things. And I just want to give you a distinction between when there is people and biology involved, it's very hard. Healthcare, agriculture is hard. Sometimes it's easier to go and start working with your power energy company and say, look, I will digitize your power so you can start squeezing more renewables. Let's work on these solar farms. And we need a lot of ICT, a lot of AI to actually start making sure that there is a constant energy supply. And whatever is man-made, buildings, energy networks, even the transport is easier to go into. That's why I just want to do a warning. Agriculture, healthcare are a little bit harder, okay? But there is a lot of examples on the mobility as a service, providing to mayors and to municipalities some services for them to treat wastewater, to actually manage waste, transport, building, the public building efficiency measures. It's very easy examples that we can link. I can link you with companies in the West if you're in this business. What can be done to save 20% of energy? 20% of energy is a huge cost for government. If you can reduce that, you have your business and you can scale very quickly.
That's a very good point. Thank you, Ilias.
Vesna, there are 2 questions in the chat. Do you want me to read them out?
I would like Frederick to get back to them. He have read them. Gergana, thank you.
Okay.
He has read them in the chat himself. And Frederick, do you want to answer directly, or do you want the speakers to say something? Or
with pleasure. And I believe those are very good points. And I'm surprised it's coming from Chris and Susonia, of course, because they are aware of the governance that we're talking here as well. So I believe it's a good angles to start discussing. So
can you just repeat the question then?
Okay. So Chris, well, I do your job then. So Chris was supported by Susonia, was asking whether there are regulatory incentives to support all what we're discussing now, and whether it will be enough, and if those regulatory incentives actually are adapted or ad hoc to just achieve what we're discussing here. And the answer is a bit of a mixed answer. Whenever we've been doing that for the last 6 months, you see different regions now starting to understand that there should be regulatory incentives. So the European Union was extremely clear. I guess European Union is taking the lead. Ilias might just be best placed than myself to talk about this, but honestly, there is a clear agenda in Europe, and we see that the different instruments that are coming to place, There will be some surprise in the future as well, I believe, but Europe is taking the lead, but we see other regions in the world, the US, start to understand what it is that they need to do, and other regions are following up. But I believe there is a clear leadership at the European Union level. What we see is that the focus right now will be either with taxonomy or with some regulatory incentive on the equipment. Let me maybe step back a little bit to, I guess most of you are aware of this, but to vocabulary from GHG, and that is scope 1, 2, and 3. Because we need to go through that. I'm sorry to better understand what we're discussing here. So you know, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Scope 1, direct emissions, scope 2, indirect emissions, and scope 3, all actually the emission from the value chain of a company. So for example, the use of sold products, of the use of processed products, right? You don't actually generate these emissions, but indirectly you do. For example, in a company, your staff is taking a flight. Well, we all know that's right. So that is scope 3. Problem that we see now, when we talk about the environmental impact of the digital service themselves, is that we see that the regulation so far focus on scope 2. What is, guys, that your equipment do as emission? And we feel that is quite unfair, actually, because let me take you an example. As a company, if I produce content, and I'm saying, guys, I'm completely compliant because my content is done in my premises and I'm doing all of this with renewable energy, so I'm 100% compliant with the climate and environmental objective. It's just overlook the fact that your content will be spread all over the network until the end users using someone else's energy. And in this case, the network operator's energy to carry on your content, your video, your whatever on their CDN or their own networks. So that would be scope 3. And so far, that's not been completely taken over. This is what we actually try to do. And we talk to a lot of people who now understand that if you take scope 3 on board and measure the impact that you are causing to the rest of the network, I believe we all absolutely aware in this community that a network is shared by so many different stakeholders, not just by the one who produce the content. In the case of YouTube, as I took as an example, but there are so many others, that if you share the burden between everybody, it's equivalent to take into account the scope 3, meaning the indirect effect of sharing video all over the network. And that is critical for us because if you do that, you would not only have a better assessment of what the internet is consuming, but a fair share in the burden. Because what we see, and I believe that will be the next big stuff coming, we see again something that I would call, and I would coin it because I don't have a better word, a new green network neutrality debate, because you have content providers who share content, but on the other way of the spectrum, you got network operators who carry on, and they have to report their scope 3, their scope 2, while the others don't have to report their scope 3. I hope I'm quite clear here, because that is critical in the conversation that we will have whenever we'll discuss greening the digital services in the world. And as we said in the beginning, we need to take that into account because Elias was speaking about how we can greenify or green industry, and my angle is how we can green the internet itself, right? And in this particular conversations, we need to have really an overview that the internet is circular and that there are many different stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Frederick. You had touched upon very important topic, and I would like to talk more about that and come with some more questions. But first, we go to Desiree because she's been waiting to ask her question. So, Desiree, do you want? Can you please switch on your? Yeah.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for this presentation, both by Elias and Frederick. It's a good conversation. My question goes towards the principles, the guiding principles that EU has put forward to help the digitization to support the sustainability goals that we have to become neutral, carbon zero by 2050 or carbon neutral by 2030. And also, especially, I'd like to ask Frederick, because he talked about a little bit about internet infrastructure and the possible changes that are needed there, to take us back to the need of and the issue of digital sufficiency. And what I mean by that is a digital technical sufficiency as well as user sufficiency, because, and I wonder if we can comment on that, because I believe that with technical sufficiency, we're trying to have the equipment that is not going every day to, or every end of the year to a scrap, but that this technical equipment would last longer. And equally, a little bit about a change of a mindset of a user, where you don't have to buy a new phone every year, and that the equipment that we have is that something that we can use that we can repair and that we can use for longer. And as well as data sufficiency, and I think EU is doing quite a lot in terms of in terms of strict data protection, so that we not all the apps produce all this amount and increase in volume of data. So yeah, these are my comments. Thank you, Vesna.
Thank you, Desiree. These are wonderful questions, and I'm happy to have you in the audience so that I don't have to ask everything. Frederick, do you want to be the first one? But I would like Elias also to comment on the, well, no, yeah, there were two questions. So let's go first to Elias and then to Frederick, okay?
Yes, okay, Desiree, very good. So you actually did the TGV through many topics. First of all, the commitment of EC at the moment are very much focusing on the greening of the ICT. So we do committed that we will make the data centers climate neutral, not carbon neutral, by 2030. That we will provide, that we will kind of enforce that the telecom companies provide the footprint picture of the services customers use. So there will be some kind of transparent measures about you as a mobile service customer to see what is the footprint of what you're doing, the streaming of the videos and sending all kinds of uploading, downloading things. So to make people aware what is the footprint of digital. And third, maybe the most important to me, is the Circular Electronics Initiative. And that's a general comment. When you think of climate change, think of circular economy. That's kind of a blind spot of people's minds. People think always fossil fuel burning, they think of carbon, energy production, energy consumption. If we suppose we are all 100% renewable tomorrow, we have not solved the problem. It's the materials that matter in the ICT sector, maybe even more, because it's rare earth materials that will not be enough soon. It's a strategic autonomy. We depend on them from third countries. The material we are throwing away, and it's really difficult to recycle. So what we can do in the hierarchy of the things, let's reuse, repair, refurbish before we think of recycling, because recycling in the iPhone or any type of mobile phones is very difficult to get the material back of quality. For example, we change mobile phones every 2 years. If we could change, if we can do something, and that's not only governments to say, there needs to be kind of a social movement to make people aware of just keeping the mobile phone 1 year longer. So instead of changing every 2, change every 3, or I change every 5, change every 6. That 1 year corresponds within 10 years from now to 2030 to 1 million cars less, of 1 million cars emissions, lifetime emissions. It's huge, just one little, personal move. And we can do many other things, of course, with your laptops and your iPads. The companies also, as I say, reuse, refurbish. So there is huge on the material efficiency. So what we do as a commission, we're trying to fix and to minimize the footprint of ICT, but we have not yet put a condition that the agriculture, transport, energy, manufacturing sectors have to use digital. It's not yet there, but we're trying to first make sure that we have the KPIs. And that's why I will send you a link soon. We need to first understand in which condition ICT will reduce emissions. Very quick example, in the cities, you see that many people advertising ever-moving mobility of electric cars in the city. And they say, you as a mayor, deploy service by making a fleet of electric cars that moves, doesn't park, it 24 hours just moves around. And that kind of say that the hope is that people will not buy a car when they live in the center of the town, which is not true in some countries. It's difficult to make people not to buy their own car. It assumes that this fleet will not cannibalize on public transport. And this assumes that people will not put objects in these cars to start sending each other gifts and presents and send me a lemon because I don't have for my salad across the city, because it's supposed to be people. So if you don't design by design to make the fleet to be complementary to public service, to be for people in this type of situations, and they buy service, mobility as a service, then you will not get, then the rebound effect, the misuse of such application will make it worse for the environment. So we need to, from the beginning, make sure that how do we use digital smartly? As I said, in the agriculture, you can just sell gadgets to farmers and piss them off and make it worse for the environment because you just deployed thousands and millions of gadgets, which is material, energy, everything, or you can do it smartly. And that difference is what we need to understand now, because we cannot 5 years from now say, oops, all these 50 billion IoT, we didn't think about, online updates, so now we have to throw them away. 50 billion connected devices have to be put in a waste, and I have to redo everything. So now is a critical moment.
Thank you. Now I would like to go back to Frederick, because there was an element of Desiree's question for Frederick too about the technical sufficiency.
Yeah, thank you, Vesna, and thank you, Desiree, for this. I love talking with techie. I miss this. You're right. Desiree questions actually remind us that there is no silver bullet to address this, right? There are different avenues. Equipment is one, with the network equipment itself, user responsibility. And we come up with a third avenues that we believe will just add up to the acceleration of all efforts. And this is the intangible part of the internet. I will come back on this in a few seconds. But yes, Desiree, you're right. The network can be made more efficient. We know in this community, for example, that if you localize the internet, you will diminish the impact of it, right? More CDNs, more local data. 5G actually is coming up with something we can take a one day talking about 5G, because yes, there will be the rebound effect, much more comms, much more video, much more whatever you want. But in the same times, 5G has the advantage to localize the data, because as you know, there will be a data localization with the antennas, meaning localizations of the traffic, which will, will have a huge impact, a positive in fact. So that the network efficiency, more CDNs, more network efficiency, that will make a great role. User responsibility, absolutely. This is the second avenues. I don't like the word sobriety when it's about to consume digital services, because I believe that is a kind of paradoxal instruction, in a right moment, in a precise moment where our societies tell us, you should, all of you industry users, SMEs, use more internet and more digital services because it will reduce impact. And at the same time, we say, but don't use it after 10 p.m. or please watch Netflix on an SD and not HD because it will make a huge difference. I'm not sure this is the right message. And this is where the fact that we want to address the intangible part of the internet comes into play. So I took the example of the sustainable interaction design in YouTube, the fact that you can absolutely, with the help of the users, identify when users actually are watching videos or not, in which case you can diminish the quality of the videos if they don't use it. Let me take another example about the intangible part of what we're trying to do. Ads. This is the core of all business on the internet. And we know that ads are consuming a lot of energy. We got figures demonstrating this. We all know this. Ads will increase the amount of data, will increase the time that you spend trying to access to the content, and will increase the number of connections. So the way you will design ads will have or not an impact. So we're not touching up the business model of companies on the internet. Ads is a truly core business for, well, this is the goal of the internet, we know it. We don't want to touch about the principle of the ads, but we want to discuss how those ads are being shaped, designed, and made so that they could or not diminish the impact. Because as you know, whenever you open a page and then you go to a following page on your web, the first page continue to have a transaction even though you don't watch the ad in question. So that can be fixed easily through a protocol, and that will just minimize the number of traffic, of connections, minimizing the service itself and the impact. So that is the intangible part that we discussed. So to us, there are 3 avenues, but we feel that discussing the intangible part of the internet, which by the way, is the most exponential one, right? I said in the beginning that 40% increase of the internet just the first year of the pandemic. And you know, and we all know that the internet doubled every year in terms of traffic. So that is the part that we say we should have an urgent look at this, and this is not yet the case. So that's the important part for us. Thank you.
Whoa, this is getting heated. So my invitation is for Frederick and Elias and everybody else who's interested to actually join the RIPE community and present these concepts again to the network operators that are operating and building the infrastructure of the internet and can influence what is going to shape the future of the internet on the ground. But until now, they did not consider sustainability or environment in large numbers. I'm sure there are some that are busy with that, but on a technical level, this is not a discussion that enough people are having. So apart from inviting you to speak, I hope that you have some other tips on how can we engage with the network operators more in greening the infrastructure rather than just the services. And very concrete question was, what is the difference between climate neutral and carbon neutral? That was a follow-up question from Desiree to Elias.
Vesna, can I jump in and add a third question in the mix? I see somewhere in the chat, if you scroll up a little bit. So Enoch is asking, maybe you can talk a little bit about how to measure results realistically, results of the sustainability efforts, I'm assuming.
Very good question. Thank you, Gergana.
So the question back. Go ahead, Frederick.
No. Elias, I know you could perfectly answer this question as much as I can, but I will answer this question. But Vesna, you're right to make that call, and I believe the call should be broader than just network operators. We need, and I know where I'm talking, we need really to embark on a collaborative process with so many different actors. Consumers should be part of the conversations because they have a role, as we know. Network operators, of course, in the technical community has a huge role to play here. And I'm glad to see that some of you see the angles that we could take through Scope 3. But I haven't even addressed those industries that have a huge impact and should be sitting at the table. The gaming industry, Bitcoin or cryptocurrency are the one who can seriously contribute to the objective that we have. You know that if you change just the algorithm used by mining for cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin coming first in mind, you could diminish, those are the most conservative figures I've seen, by 22% the consumption of in terms of carbon emission of Bitcoin. Just this, we change the algorithm that people would be using while mining. So those are concrete conversations that we need to have, and not only with industry, with consumers, and of course, policymakers and regulators should be in the room. So that's the approach that we want to promote in Digital Growth Greens. Now, to get to the questions, yes, you will see, and I'm smiling because I already had this conversation with Ilias. We see all over the world figures from 1 to 10 whenever they try to assess the environment in different services of the internet in general. And that is something that we need to fix as well, because it just depends on what it is you measure and how you measure it. And of course, including scope 3. So a serious conversation that we need to have is about measuring the impact of what we're talking right now. That is in the loop. Ilias.
Yes, I mean, I invite, was it Desiree that asked, there are many explanations on the internet, but in my mind, kind of simply think about CO2 only. So what we as human activity are responsible for letting CO2 in the atmosphere. That's the carbon, and the climate is many other gases and many other, gases beyond CO2 that we're releasing with our activities. So think about it like that.
Thank you.
So there are methane and other things that we do that we actually release, nature's release, because we do something that from cows to land sequestration that doesn't work anymore properly. So it's much more complex on the climate neutrality part. Of course, they are very, very, very difficult questions to solve on the climate. And that's why everybody's looking how to do carbon capture, which is the next El Dorado of our innovation and the technology companies, how they can capture, because they know they will never be climate. Whatever you do, you cannot be climate because you produce physical things, unless we all become matrix society, that everything is virtual based on renewables. But still, every time you have something to produce and you transport or you use material, there will be some kind of a footprint. We just need to make sure that it's minimized, that we actually are aware of it, because we still don't know. A lot of people have no clue how they can, with a small change, make a big difference. Or redesign, like the comment from Sten Erik about, 2 different cryptocurrencies, huge difference between them.
Going back to the question that Girgana read from the chat, what are the ways to measure and to show if the small or large companies are compliant with either?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry about this is actually my biggest point of the day. So what I really wanted to it's my headache, it's the work I do currently. I'm trying to organize the world of ICT to work together with the other sectoral companies to measure what is the impact of digital. What is the footprint of digital? It's already standardized. It's just difficult standard. It's the ITU and /ETSI standard 203199. So there is a standard where you can take a device, you take a service, and you can measure the footprint of the digital. It's still very, very difficult to do it consistently. But okay, there is a standard. Where we do not have standards, and it's really difficult, and it's kind of wild west of imagination, homegrown calculators, is how much green gains, how much of reduction of CO2, how much of pollution reduction I achieve by deploying ICT. Because it really much depends what kind of rebound effect and indirect things you will allow to happen. And there we're trying to standardize things, because if you don't do that, procurers don't know how to ask for energy efficiency of building system. So if the mayor wants to deploy ICT for its buildings, he doesn't know which company to award it, because there are no metrics to compare how many CO2, how many tons of CO2 we actually cut through it. So we need to standardize the way we look at the impact. And that is not easy, because it has to go down to a context and it has to go down to really constrain the negative other known unknowns, as I call the rebound effects. But of course, there will be unknown unknowns that if people start misusing it, that beyond anybody's imagination, of course, that will also take a little bit away from the net impact. So the measurement itself is now subject to a big European projects that we're evaluating that will be part of the Green Digital Coalition, link of which I have sent. If you are in this business, if you are interested in this, if you're even interested how to report on your own footprint, there are schemes like Science-Based Target Initiative or others that can actually measure it. So there's an army of consultants and experts that can measure your footprint. What I'm more interested to make sure that we actually use ICT smartly to reduce bigger footprint. Two numbers. The ICT footprint overall is about 3% of total greenhouse gas emissions. The potential of using ICT smartly is 15, to cut 15 to 20%. So you understand, let's make sure that the 3 never grows, and we have commissioned plans. How do we keep it in that ball and slowly draw it down? We don't let it grow, but we really want to make sure that we can realize the potential of cutting 20%. And that's not easy. We need metrics, we need good discussion between the sectors, because not all digitalizations are equal. That's what I'm trying to pass to you. And think of materials when you think of ICT, not only the electricity.
And so if people would like to take part in those discussions, you said you sent a link, but is that forum accessible to everybody? So both the industry and researchers and citizens and activists, who can take part in these discussions?
So the core members, that's why you see big companies. If you click, you see the biggest ICT companies. The core members are those that are already monitored by Science-Based Target Initiative or equivalent, how they will reduce emissions, and they will reduce to climate zero, net zero by 2040. Not everybody can do it. So we are building now at the associated membership for smaller companies that still have some kind of a monitoring of their emissions that will go climate neutral by 2050. And then we have a project that will bring all the experts, the standardization experts, NGOs, institutes that work on this mapping and calculations of net environmental impact. So I'm actually evaluating a project that will bring them together. So end of the year, we will bring the experts on per sector, so agriculture, mobility, construction, manufacturing, energy. We will work and try to do these KPIs and then feed them to governments, to financial institutions, to our EU taxonomy, so we know European money can go and finance digitalization of agriculture if it stays within those rules.
And how can civil society take part in this?
Through the project that I mentioned. So whoever is interested can send me an email, and I basically end of the year you will have all the information how to link up to it.
If you would like to invite the network infrastructure operators as a separate expert category, I invite you to talk to Miriam Kuhne. She's a chair of RIPE community, and then she can point you out to specific experts in this area.
Yes, yeah, I'm already in touch with SDIA and with the IGF people, of course. So, but that's the infrastructure. The infrastructure is needed, so don't underestimate. I mean, all these goodies that ICT can do rely that we have an infrastructure that is working and that is as green as possible. So we cannot say that ICT is a pollution, because there are some institutions that basically propagate the story that no, ICT is just turn off the internet. ICT is a pollution, period. There is nothing good about it, because there are some kind of environmental jihadis that forget what sustainability is. Sustainability is economic growth, societal issues, social issues, and environmental issues. You cannot just say, okay, for decades, ICT was supporting economy, stop doing that, let's support environment. We cannot do that. We need to support, it must be a triple win. And that's the hard conversation, because those are completely different communities. Those that are fixed on social issues do not talk to the people that work on environmental issues, and those do not talk to people that are purely economic issues, And that is the challenge. More than the technical, it's the challenge of these communities that are on different planets to bring them together to have a win-win-win.
Thank you. And I'd like to actually wrap this up because we only have a few minutes left. To end, I would like to give the closing round word to two of our speakers. But before we go there, is there another burning question in the chat?
At the moment, so there have been a number of interesting links. I would encourage everyone to take a look, and there have been also some comments, but there have been no questions. There has been a question. Somebody can resend the link from Ilias.
Yeah, I can do it now. Wait.
Thank you. And if somebody else from the participants would like to speak for a minute, I can give you a word before we go back to the closing words. And also, I did not practice this with the organizers. So do the organizers want to also have some time before we finish? I see a hand. Enoch, yeah, go ahead.
Okay, good morning. I'm Enoch from Ghana, and I'm very glad and happy to hear these conversations. I can see there is a more regionally focused conversation, and I hope that sooner or later we'll be having similar conversations in the African region. And I just hope these conversations are not mere conversations, but they yield results that can help the planet to become better over time. Because looking back, what our grand generations were having as an environment is not what we are having now. And we are even going to hand over a worse environment to our younger generations if action is not taken. So I like the conversation, and I hope we get to have similar conversations about Africa. Thank you very much.
Vesna, can I jump in to respond to Enoch on something?
Yes, I just want to say thank you, Enoch, for speaking up. So yes, Ilias, go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that you understand that what we do as Europe and the innovation in doing Europe is kind of not enough. That what we're talking about has to be a global approach. So I'm working with UN, I'm working, in bilateral with different regions of the world. Africa is really key. Half of the cities of the 2050 have not been built yet. So if we take the holistic approach, we need to make sure that the construction per se becomes more sustainable. So the material it uses, so every building, it's like a product that can be recycled. So the cities have to start being built in sustainable way. ICT has to be used in sustainable way. And what really, if we achieve the worldwide thinking of what we're discussing today, is the key. So now we're focusing on the particularity of the Southeast Europe, but these ideas are not special for them. They are going global, and it's also a global market possibility. So think if you can actually develop solution that works for mayors, for their buildings, for their transport, for their waste, for their energy network, this is a global question that will have to be deployed everywhere. So definitely it's not only let's be the best and show the others. No, everybody has to do it. Otherwise, Europe's emissions are 9% of total. I mean, even if we make Europe zero, it's nothing. You can say, okay, as Europe, we consume 23% of the emissions. Okay, so we will push on the others that are sending us products to be green. But still, it's all about the rest of the world to adopt and to get on the same line. So we all collaborate and get to the same results.
Thank you. That sounded like a very nice closing speech, but you will get the word again. Frederick, let's go back to you. If you got inspired with some of the last conversations, and if you would like to have closing words, please go ahead now.
I wish. Thank you, Vesna. And I was about to say the same. Lilia said, the effort, especially when it's about the internet, which is global, needs to be global. There might be a tendency for some people to believe that we do an effort in our Western countries, and there would be some waste, and this waste might be in other regions. So thank you, Enoch, for your intervention, because yes, Africa, and we engage Africa as much as we engage Asia right now in the US, are critical regions, especially at the moment where specific regions are trying to fill the gap of digital. They need to fill it with this green mindset in mind so that they have this competitive advantage at global level as well, but they then contribute to the global effort. So what I was about to say about Southeast Europe region, we say exactly the same. We've seen some gaps, we've seen some effort, we've seen that the region as well as other regions has been hit by the COVID and pandemic very hard. So there is a contraction of the economy. So really, whenever it's about bridging the gap for digitizations, it needs to be done with this green mindset in mind as well. So as you understand now, I guess, is that we are focusing from our side on the intangible part of the internet, because we believe, and no one else than this community can understand this, we believe that is a question for each and every stakeholder. So Vesna, you mentioned networks operators who are a critical player, but so are users, the financial sector, the regulators, and others, including, of course, the content providers and those who fuel the internet with the digital services. So this is what we propose, that we really succeed, because this is a big chunk of environmental impact, that we really succeed to design, as from now on, an internet. This is green by design, precisely. Thank you.
Thank you. So these kind of events, as the SEEDIG has shown, are wonderful opportunity for all these various players and various layers of deployment to meet and exchange experiences. And there were two more events promoted in the chat, and that was Desiree is organizing a hackathon, and Miriam has mentioned the RIPE 83 meeting in November of the network operators. And so there is another large internet governance meeting happening, which somebody else might want to speak about. And so let's meet again. Let's continue this conversation. Let's learn from each other. I'm hoping that the organizers will also save the chat and all the links that have been shared, and send them to all of us in final report. And I'd like to invite or hand over to Olga. Oh, wait, no. Before Olga, I want to give word to Ilias for final words, and then get the word back to Olga. And I greet you all. Thank you for your attention, and it was my pleasure to be a moderator today.
So thank you, Vesna, for the moderating, and the organizers, Olga, and the whole team behind you for making this happen. I just have a specific message again to the stakeholders, let's say majority small, medium enterprises in the Southeast Europe. Why should you go green? Because my point is, it's the smart way to do. It's the way for the future. Instead of just running and copying what everybody else is doing, try to analyze what is the opportunity, because that region is below the average in terms of green transition. That is the opportunity. Being below average in green energy production, in building efficiency, in circular thinking, it's a huge opportunity for local sectors, because that's where the financial institutions will focus. That's where the governments will come with laws. And if you jump and start thinking now, you will be ahead of the competition. So this is an opportunity for the enterprise, even for national or some kind of a non-profit organizations. They can also move in that direction and support players. The last thing is, I work with big companies lately, and I listen to them. I spend hundreds of hours to understand their problematic. They want to be green, and we actually introducing laws for them not to lie about it anymore. So greenwashing will not pass. There's a whole army of, let's say, environmentalists and laws that will not allow greenwashing. So they're really trying to see what to do. What does it mean? They need to make their supply chain green. That means every small, medium enterprise that works with big company has to be green. So if you want to be supplier or collaborator with a larger company, they are looking at you as green, not only as cheapest. That's why it's an opportunity for you to, whatever service you're working on, whatever products you're working on, the greener you make, and the way you have to see that you can measure it, you will be the preferred customer of the big companies, of governments, of everybody tomorrow. So that's as simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And this is the end of our conversation. I would like to thank all the speakers and all the organizers. And I would like Olga to have the final closing word.
Thank you very much, Vesna, and thanks a lot to Frederick and Elias for this very interesting discussion. I'm sure that all of us got a lot of new insights, and probably from now on we will use more often green and digital together, and would not really wonder what does that mean. So we also have seen that this is a topic of high interest, so we will most likely continue with exploring different angles and perspectives of this issue. And we would be happy to stay in touch with you and to explore any further opportunities for collaboration. Also, huge thanks on behalf of the program committee to all the participants. Thanks for being with us today. Stay tuned and follow our announcements on SEEDIG channels. We will be organizing other events during autumn as well on other topics, which we promise would be not less interesting. So we will try to keep the level the same. Thank you very much. Enjoy your day and see you soon.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Let's all unmute ourselves and say greetings to each other and enjoy the last moments together.
Well,
thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been great to see you. Bye.
Sounds great and wonderful to hear everyone at the same time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.